I'm Autumn, 34, and never thought my Victorian inheritance would tear my family apart. 5 years ago, my grandparents left me their historic Boston home, which I lovingly renovated. Now my sister Mackenzie is pregnant, and my parents delivered an impossible ultimatum: sell her my house at half price or be disowned. What they don't know is I just discovered her CEO husband Ryan has already broken ground on their dream mansion. Before I share how this family drama unfolded, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to join me on this wild journey of family betrayal and standing my ground. The house that became the center of this family war isn't just any property. It's a stunning Victorian in Boston's historic district with 4 bedrooms, original hardwood floors, handcrafted crown molding, and stained glass windows that cast rainbow patterns across the rooms when the afternoon sun hits just right. Built in 1897, it has the kind of character and history you simply can't find in modern homes. The wraparound porch with its intricate spindles was where my grandmother would sit with me during summer evenings, telling stories about her childhood while we sipped homemade lemonade. My grandparents, Eleanor and William, were more like parents to me in many ways. While my actual parents were busy with their corporate careers and focused on my younger sister Mackenzie, I spent every summer and many weekends at this house. Grandma Eleanor taught me to appreciate antiques and historical architecture, while Grandpa William showed me how to use tools and respect craftsmanship. They fostered my love of design that eventually became my career. When they passed away within months of each other 5 years ago, everyone was shocked that they left the house to me specifically. The will was clear: they wanted me to have it because they knew how much I loved it and would preserve its character. My parents were surprised but didn't object openly at the time. My sister Mackenzie seemed indifferent, as she and her then-fiancé Ryan were more interested in modern luxury than historical charm. The house needed work when I inherited it. The plumbing was ancient, the electrical system was a fire hazard, and the kitchen hadn't been updated since the 1970s. I poured my heart, soul, and savings into renovating it properly. As an interior designer, I respected its historical elements while making it functional for modern living. I preserved the original fireplaces, restored the hardwood floors, and kept all the beautiful woodwork while updating the kitchen and bathrooms. It was exhausting, expensive work that took nearly 2 years, but the result was a showcase home that balanced historical integrity with contemporary comfort. This house became more than my home, it became my portfolio. As an interior designer specializing in historical renovations, I could show clients exactly what was possible in their own vintage homes. My business grew significantly after completing the renovation, and I've been featured in several design magazines. The house literally built my career. My sister Mackenzie took a very different path in life. 2 years younger than me at 32, she became a corporate lawyer at a prestigious firm where she met Ryan, now 38, who was already making waves as a tech executive. While I was covered in paint and sawdust, Mackenzie was climbing the corporate ladder in designer suits. Ryan eventually became CEO of his company, and they married in an extravagant ceremony 3 years ago that my parents spared no expense for. My parents, Margaret and Thomas, have always been obviously partial to Mackenzie. They're both from corporate backgrounds, dad in finance and mom in pharmaceutical sales, and they related more to Mackenzie's ambitions and lifestyle. When she brought home perfect report cards, they'd take her to expensive restaurants. When I brought home art awards, they'd nod and ask about my math grades. This pattern continued into adulthood. Mackenzie's law school graduation warranted a European vacation, my design school graduation got a dinner at a local restaurant. I made peace with their favoritism years ago and built my own support system of friends who value creativity and authenticity. Rachel, my best friend since college, and her husband James have been more family to me than my biological one in many ways. They helped me through the renovation process and celebrated every milestone of my business growth. My relationship with my family settled into a cordial but distant rhythm. We'd have occasional Sunday dinners, exchange birthday and Christmas gifts, and maintain the appearance of family unity while keeping emotional distance. I focused on my career and building a life I loved in my beautiful home, while they focused on Mackenzie's corporate achievements and her marriage into even greater wealth. The house became my sanctuary, a place where I could be fully myself away from my parents' judgment and Mackenzie's competitiveness. Every inch of it reflected my taste, my work, and my vision. From the garden I planted using my grandmother's heirloom seeds to the third-floor studio where I met with clients, it was entirely mine. I never imagined they would expect me to give it up, especially not in the way they ultimately demanded. 3 weeks ago, we had what started as a normal Sunday dinner at my parents' suburban colonial. These dinners follow a predictable pattern. Mom micromanages the meal preparation while rejecting any help, Dad talks about his golf game, and Mackenzie dominates the conversation with stories about her important cases or Ryan's latest business triumph. I usually sit quietly, ask polite questions, and count the minutes until I can politely leave. This particular evening seemed typical until dessert, when Mackenzie tapped her spoon against her water glass like she was about to give a wedding toast. "Ryan and I have some exciting news," she announced, her face glowing. She reached for Ryan's hand as he beamed next to her. "We're expecting. I'm 10 weeks pregnant." The room erupted. Mom burst into tears, Dad opened a bottle of champagne he apparently had chilling just in case, and they both hugged Mackenzie and Ryan like they'd just announced they'd cured cancer. I was genuinely happy for them. Despite our complicated relationship, I would never begrudge them the joy of becoming parents. "Congratulations," I said, giving Mackenzie a sincere hug. "You're going to be amazing parents." "Thanks, Autumn," she replied, but her eyes were fixed on our parents' reactions rather than on me. As the initial excitement settled, Mom began peppering them with questions about due dates, doctors, and nursery plans. That's when I noticed the first hint of what was to come. "Have you thought about where you'll raise the baby?" Mom asked. "That condo of yours is lovely, but a baby needs a yard and space to grow." Mackenzie and Ryan exchanged a look that, in retrospect, I should have recognized as rehearsed. "We've been talking about that," Mackenzie said. "We definitely want a family home with character, not just some new construction in the suburbs." "A child needs roots," my father added sagely. "A sense of family history." The conversation moved on, but throughout the evening, there were more comments that seemed innocuous at the time. Mom mentioned how wonderful it would be for the baby to grow up in a home with history. Dad talked about neighborhoods with good schools, and specifically mentioned my area. Ryan asked surprisingly detailed questions about my street and neighbors, which I answered without suspicion. A week later, I received a text from Mackenzie. "Hey sis, can we talk about the house? Call me when you have a minute." Assuming she wanted advice on house hunting, I called her that evening after finishing with a client. "Hey Mac, congrats again on the baby. What's up with house hunting?" There was a pause before she responded. "Actually, that's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. Ryan and I have been thinking, your house would be perfect for us to raise our baby." I laughed, thinking she was joking. "Right, I'm sure you and Ryan want my old Victorian instead of some modern mansion." "I'm serious, Autumn," she said, her voice taking on the same tone she used in childhood when she wanted one of my toys. "The more we think about it, the more perfect it seems. 4 bedrooms for our growing family, that beautiful yard, the history. Plus it's already in the family." I felt a strange sensation in my stomach. "Mac, I'm not selling my house. I put everything into renovating it, and it's literally the showcase for my business." "We'd pay you for it, of course," she said as if I'd misunderstood. "Ryan and I were thinking we could offer you $450,000. That's a fair family price." I nearly choked. The market value was easily double that after my renovations and with Boston's real estate boom. More importantly, it wasn't for sale at any price. "That's not even close to market value, but it doesn't matter because I'm not selling. This is my home, Mac. I built my business around it." "Don't be difficult, Autumn," she said, her voice hardening. "You can do your interior design thing anywhere. We're talking about starting our family. Mom and Dad agree that it makes perfect sense for us to have the house." So they'd already discussed this with our parents before approaching me. That felt like a betrayal in itself. I'm sorry, but the answer is no. I'm happy to help you find another historical home to renovate if that's what you want, but this one is mine. The conversation deteriorated from there. Mackenzie's voice became increasingly shrill as she listed reasons why she deserved the house more than I did. She was starting a family, she needed stability for the baby, our parents wanted their grandchild raised there, and on and on. When logic didn't work, she switched to emotional manipulation, suggesting I was being selfish and didn't care about family. You've always been so obsessed with that house, she snapped. It's like you think Grandma and Grandpa loved you more or something. Now you're choosing a building over your own family. That's not fair, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. This isn't about choosing anything over family. It's about respecting that this is my home. Well, this isn't over, she said ominously before hanging up. I sat in my beautiful living room, surrounded by the carefully restored crown molding and original hardwood floors I'd spent weeks refinishing by hand, and felt a sense of dread. Knowing my family, this was indeed far from over. The next morning, my phone rang as I was preparing coffee in my kitchen. Seeing my father's name on the screen, I braced myself before answering. Autumn, he began without greeting, your mother and I are very disappointed in how you spoke to your sister yesterday. I took a deep breath. Good morning to you too, Dad. I'm sorry if Mackenzie was upset, but I was clear and respectful about not wanting to sell my home. This isn't about what you want, he said in the same tone he'd used when I'd announced my plan to attend design school instead of business school. This is about what's best for the family. Mackenzie is starting a family, and that house has plenty of room for children. It makes sense for her to have it. Dad, this is my home. I've put 5 years and all my savings into renovating it. My business is built around it. I can't just give it up because Mackenzie decided she wants it. My mother's voice suddenly joined the conversation. They were on speakerphone. Autumn, dear, be reasonable. You don't have children to think about. Mackenzie needs to provide stability for her baby. Surely you can find another house? You're good with fixing places up. Their dismissal of my attachment to the house and the years of work I'd invested was infuriating. They spoke as if my home and business were a hobby I could easily relocate, while Mackenzie's desires were serious and important. Mom, I understand Mackenzie is excited about the baby, and I'm happy for her. But that doesn't mean I should give up my home. Ryan makes more than enough money to buy any house they want. It's not just any house, it's a family home, my father countered. Your grandparents would have wanted their great-grandchild to grow up there. If that were true, they would have left it to both of us or put conditions in the will. They didn't. They left it specifically to me because they knew how much I loved it. The conversation went in circles for nearly an hour. They deployed every tactic, guilt, manipulation, appeals to family loyalty, even suggesting my grandparents would be disappointed in me. When those didn't work, my father switched to thinly veiled threats. You should think very carefully about your position in this family, Autumn. Some things are more important than bricks and mortar. After hanging up, I needed to clear my head, so I texted my friend Rachel and asked if she could meet for lunch. Over salads at our favorite cafe, I recounted the conversations with Mackenzie and my parents. I can't believe they're asking you to give up your home, Rachel said, shaking her head. And for half its value? That's not just emotionally manipulative, it's financially predatory. They've always favored Mackenzie, but this is beyond anything they've done before, I admitted. It's like they don't see my home as mine at all, just a family asset they can reallocate according to their preferences. And where exactly do they expect you to live? Rachel asked. They haven't even considered that part, I said. Dad just said I could find another place, like it's as simple as picking up a new shirt at the mall. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a notification from our family group chat. Mackenzie had sent a photo of her barely visible baby bump with the caption, "Can't wait to see which of Grandma's bedrooms will become the nursery." My mother immediately responded with heart emojis and the one with the bay window would be perfect. It was as if they were deliberately ignoring my refusal, proceeding as if my compliance was inevitable. Over the next several days, the group chat became a battleground of passive-aggressive comments. Mackenzie sent links to articles about the importance of family homes for child development and photos of nursery designs that would look perfect in the third bedroom. My parents joined in, sending old family photos taken in my house with captions like 4 generations in this home, and can't wait to see the 5th generation here. When I didn't respond, my mother texted me privately, "Your silence is hurting your sister. Pregnancy is a sensitive time." Meanwhile, my father sent, "We raised you to put family first. Very disappointed in your selfishness." The pressure was becoming unbearable. Even my business began to suffer as I struggled to focus on client projects while my phone constantly buzzed with manipulative messages. I started having trouble sleeping, lying awake wondering if I was being unreasonable, if I should just give in to keep the peace. Rachel and James invited me over for dinner that Friday, concerned about my increasingly stressed texts. James, who works in real estate law, was particularly outraged. "They're trying to bully you out of a major asset," he said as we sat in their kitchen. If this were any other situation, everyone would see how insane it is to demand someone sell their primary residence for half its value. "The worst part is they're making me feel like I'm the crazy one," I admitted. "Like I'm selfish for not wanting to give up my home." "That's gaslighting," Rachel said firmly. "They're trying to make you doubt your completely reasonable boundaries. Stand your ground, Autumn. This house isn't just a building to you, it's your history, your business, and your future." Their support strengthened my resolve, but the situation at home continued to deteriorate. Mackenzie began stopping by unannounced, walking through rooms measuring spaces and commenting on changes she would make. When I objected, she'd tear up and say I was stressing her out during her pregnancy. After 2 weeks of this psychological warfare, I received a formal dinner invitation from my parents via email, not our usual casual text arrangement. The subject line read "Important Family Discussion, Attendance Mandatory." The formal tone sent a chill through me. This was the summit meeting, and I suspected an ambush. I arrived at my parents' house exactly on time for the mandatory dinner, my stomach in knots. I'd spent the day preparing myself emotionally, rehearsing calm responses to what I expected would be an intense confrontation. I'd even called Rachel beforehand for a pep talk. "Remember, you're not crazy for wanting to keep your own house," she'd reassured me. "No matter what they say, you have the right to set this boundary." My parents' house was unusually formal that evening. The dining room table was set with the good china they normally reserved for Thanksgiving and Christmas. A bottle of expensive wine was already open and breathing. This was stagecraft, designed to signal the gravity of the occasion. My mother greeted me with a kiss on the cheek that didn't reach her eyes. "Autumn, good of you to come. Everyone's in the living room." By everyone, she meant my father, Mackenzie, and Ryan. My father was standing by the fireplace, looking stern in a blazer he usually reserved for client meetings. Mackenzie and Ryan sat together on the sofa, holding hands. Mackenzie wore a loose-fitting dress that emphasized her small baby bump, while Ryan was uncharacteristically subdued. They all looked up when I entered, and I immediately felt like a defendant walking into a courtroom. "Autumn," my father nodded, not moving to hug me as he normally would. "Let's have a drink before dinner." The small talk was painfully forced as my mother distributed glasses of wine, sparkling water for Mackenzie, of course. We discussed the weather, a recent sporting event, and an upcoming local festival, anything but the obvious reason for this gathering. When we finally moved to the dining table, my father waited until my mother had served the main course before clearing his throat. "We've asked you here tonight to resolve the situation with the house," he began, as if introducing a business meeting. "It's gone on long enough, and it's time to come to a family decision." I put down my fork. I wasn't aware there was a family decision to be made about my house. My mother jumped in, her voice gentle but firm. "Autumn, we know you put work into the place, and we appreciate that. But sometimes in families, we need to think beyond ourselves." "This isn't about thinking beyond myself," I said carefully. "This is about my home, my business, and my financial security." We've come up with a fair solution, my father continued as if I hadn't spoken. Mackenzie and Ryan are prepared to offer you $500,000 for the house. That's $50,000 more than their original offer. The market value was at least $900,000, and we all knew it. This wasn't a negotiation, it was an insult. That's still significantly below market value, I pointed out. But more importantly, I've told everyone repeatedly that I don't want to sell. Autumn, Mackenzie interjected, her hand protectively over her stomach, we're not talking about some random buyer. We're talking about family. About your niece or nephew having the childhood home they deserve. You and Ryan can provide a wonderful home for your child without taking mine, I said. You have the resources to buy any house you want. But we want that house, Mackenzie insisted, her voice rising. It's perfect for us, and it's already in the family. It's not in the family, I corrected. It's mine. Grandma and Grandpa left it specifically to me. My father's expression darkened. That's enough, Autumn. Your mother and I have discussed this at length, and we've made our decision. Your decision? I echoed incredulously. About my house? He placed both hands flat on the table, leaning forward. Here's the situation. Either you sell the house to your sister for the price we've discussed, or you need to reconsider your position in this family. The room went silent. My mother looked down at her plate. Mackenzie had the grace to look uncomfortable, but Ryan's face remained impassive. Are you threatening to disown me if I don't sell my house to Mackenzie? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. We're asking you to do what's right for the family, my mother said, still not meeting my eyes. Sometimes being part of a family means making sacrifices. What sacrifices has Mackenzie ever been asked to make? I demanded, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. When have any of you sacrificed anything for me? Don't make this ugly, Autumn, my father warned. The fact is, Mackenzie has a family to think about. You're a single woman with no children. You don't need a 4-bedroom house. So my life, my choices, my business count for nothing because I'm not married with children? The injustice of it took my breath away. You're twisting our words, my mother said, finally looking up. We love you, but you're choosing a house over your own family. Over your own sister and her baby. Mackenzie began to cry, perfectly timed tears running down her cheeks. I don't understand why you hate me so much, she sobbed. These pregnancy hormones are already making everything so hard, and now my own sister wants to deny my baby a proper home. It was a masterful performance, one she'd been perfecting since childhood. I looked at Ryan, expecting him to comfort his wife, but he remained oddly detached, watching the scene unfold with an almost clinical interest. This isn't about hating anyone, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. This is about respecting me enough not to demand I give up my home. Enough discussion, my father said firmly. We need your decision, Autumn. Will you do the right thing for your family, or not? In that moment, looking at their expectant faces, I realized a fundamental truth. They had never seen me as a full, autonomous person with my own needs and rights. I was an accessory to the family, expected to orbit around Mackenzie's needs and desires as we all had for her entire life. My decision is the same as it's been from the beginning, I said, standing up. The house is not for sale. Not to Mackenzie, not to anyone. My father's face flushed with anger. Then you leave us no choice. Until you reconsider, you are no longer welcome at family gatherings. Your mother and I can't support someone who would hurt her own sister this way. Robert, my mother gasped, though whether she was shocked by his ultimatum or my refusal was unclear. He means it, Mom, Mackenzie said, her tears suddenly dry. Autumn has made her choice. She's chosen a pile of bricks over her own flesh and blood. I looked around the table at these people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. If you actually believe that's what's happening here, then maybe we do need some time apart. I placed my napkin on the table, turned, and walked out without another word. In the car, the tears finally came. I sobbed so hard I couldn't drive, pulling over just a few blocks from my parents' house to let the emotions pour out. Years of being the less favored child, of having my choices questioned and my accomplishments minimized, all culminating in this ultimate rejection, it was overwhelming. After nearly 20 minutes of crying, I called Rachel, my voice still thick with tears. They gave me an ultimatum, I managed to say. Sell the house to Mackenzie or be cut off from the family. Oh, Autumn, she breathed. I'm so sorry. Come over right now. You shouldn't be alone. As I put the car in drive, I felt a strange mixture of grief and relief. The worst had happened, and somehow I was still standing. I had lost my family, but in their ultimatum, they had finally shown me exactly who they were, and perhaps who they had always been. The next morning, I woke up on Rachel and James's guest bed, my eyes swollen from crying and my head pounding. For a moment, I hoped the previous night had been a nightmare, but the missed calls and angry texts on my phone confirmed it had all been painfully real. I was scrolling through the messages, each one more guilt-inducing than the last, when my phone rang. It was Charlotte, a coworker who specialized in staging luxury properties for sale. We weren't particularly close, so her call was unexpected. Autumn, sorry to bother you on a Saturday, she began, but I saw something yesterday that seemed weird. Are your sister and brother-in-law building a house? The question caught me off guard. Not that I know of. Why? I was at the Newfields development yesterday, you know, that luxury community they're building west of the city? I was consulting on interior finishes for a client, and I saw the plans for another house being built there. The owners listed were Ryan and Mackenzie Campbell. Isn't that your sister and her husband? My mind raced. Yes, that's them. Are you sure about this? Positive. I even commented to the site manager about what an amazing house it was, 7 bedrooms, indoor pool, home theater, the works. He mentioned they broke ground 3 months ago and expected completion in about 6 months. 3 months ago. Well before Mackenzie's pregnancy announcement. Well before their sudden interest in my house. Charlotte, this is really important. Is there any way you could get me more information about this house they're building? She hesitated. I probably shouldn't, but the plans are in the site office. I'm heading back there Monday to finalize some details with my client. I could take a look. I would really appreciate that, I said, my mind still trying to process this information. After hanging up, I immediately called James, who had left earlier for a Saturday golf game. James, I need your help with something. Do you still have access to property records through your firm's database? I do, he said, concerned. What's going on? I need to check if Ryan and Mackenzie have a building permit in the Newfields development. Charlotte just called and said she saw plans for a massive house they're building there. Give me a few minutes, he said. While waiting for James to call back, I did some research of my own. The Newfields development was an ultra-luxury community being built on former farmland about 20 miles from the city. Homes there started at $2 million, with custom builds going much higher. James called back within half an hour. You're not going to believe this, he said. They not only have a building permit, but they've already spent over $1.5 million on construction. The plans were approved 8 months ago, Autumn. This isn't a recent decision. 8 months ago. Even longer than Charlotte had suggested. That doesn't make any sense, I said. If they're building their dream home, why are they trying to force me to sell them mine? I don't know, but there's more. I checked the property values in your neighborhood. Did you know there's been a massive rezoning approval? The historical district is being expanded to include your street, and there's a new tech corridor being developed 3 blocks away. What does that mean? It means property values on your street are projected to increase by 80 to 100% in the next 5 years. Your house could be worth nearly $2 million by the time the development is complete. The pieces started falling into place. This wasn't about Mackenzie wanting a family home with character. This wasn't about giving their baby roots or honoring my grandparents' memory. This was about money. They're trying to get my house at half price because they know it's going to double in value, I said slowly. They never intended to live there. That would be my guess, James agreed. They probably plan to either flip it immediately for a profit or hold on to it as an investment property while they live in their custom mansion. The realization made me feel physically ill. My own sister and her husband had manipulated my entire family, used their pregnancy as emotional leverage, and nearly succeeded in pressuring me out of my home, all for financial gain. I spent the rest of the weekend gathering evidence. Charlotte came through with photos of the construction site and copies of the architectural plans. The house they were building was a 7,500 square foot modern mansion with every luxury imaginable, hardly the character-filled family home Mackenzie had claimed to want. James helped me compile property records and projections for my neighborhood, confirming that my street was indeed poised for a significant increase in value due to the rezoning and nearby development. By Monday morning, I had a complete picture of their deception. The timing couldn't have been coincidental. They had started building their actual dream home 8 months ago, discovered the potential value increase in my neighborhood, and hatched a plan to acquire my house at a fraction of its current worth, let alone its future value. The pregnancy might have been genuine, but they had weaponized it, using it as the perfect emotional leverage to pressure me into giving up my home. The thought of how calculated their behavior had been made my blood boil. I arranged to meet with Jason, another friend who worked in luxury real estate, to get his professional opinion on what I'd discovered. Over coffee at a quiet cafe, I showed him everything I'd compiled. "This is unbelievable," he said, shaking his head as he reviewed the documents. "Your assessment is spot on. They're trying to pull off a major real estate coup at your expense. The question is, what do I do now?" I asked. Jason leaned back, considering. "If it were me, I'd confront them with everything you've found. Not just Mackenzie and Ryan, but your parents too. They deserve to know they'd been manipulated as well." "You think my parents don't know about this?" "It's possible they're in on it," he acknowledged, "but it's also possible they genuinely believe Mackenzie's story about wanting your house for sentimental reasons. Either way, bringing the truth to light is your best move." As I drove home, I felt a strange calm replacing the hurt and confusion of the past few days. The truth had given me clarity and, with it, strength. I wasn't the unreasonable one in this scenario. I wasn't choosing a house over family. I was refusing to be defrauded by people who should have protected me. I spent that evening creating a detailed presentation of everything I'd discovered, complete with property records, construction photos, architectural plans, and market projections. If I was going to confront my family, I wanted irrefutable evidence that would make denial impossible. The final piece was a letter from my grandparents that I found while going through old papers, written just before they updated their will to leave me the house. In it, they expressed their confidence that I would be the perfect steward for their beloved home because of my appreciation for its history and character. Reading their words brought tears to my eyes but also strengthened my resolve. My family had tried to use emotional manipulation against me. Now I had both facts and genuine emotion on my side. After compiling all my evidence, I texted my parents, "I've reconsidered your offer about the house. Can we meet tomorrow evening to discuss?" Their response was immediate and enthusiastic, clearly assuming I'd capitulated. I spent the next day preparing myself emotionally for the confrontation. This wasn't just about the house anymore, it was about standing up for myself against a lifetime of being undervalued and manipulated. Rachel helped me rehearse what I would say, reminding me to stay calm and focused on the facts. "Don't let them derail you with emotional appeals," she advised. "Your evidence is solid. Make them address it." I arrived at my parents' house carrying a professional portfolio containing all my documentation and a laptop for the digital presentation I'd prepared. My father opened the door with a triumphant smile that faded slightly when he saw my businesslike demeanor. "Autumn," he said, ushering me inside. "Your mother's in the living room. Mackenzie and Ryan are on their way." My mother rushed to hug me. "I knew you'd make the right decision, dear. Family always comes first." I didn't return the hug with my usual warmth. Let's wait until everyone's here before we discuss anything. 20 minutes later, Mackenzie and Ryan arrived. Mackenzie immediately launched into an effusive greeting. Autumn. We're so happy you've come around. You've made the right choice, I promise. This means so much to us. Let's sit down, I said, gesturing to the dining room table where I'd already set up my laptop. I have some things I'd like to share before we finalize anything. They exchanged confused glances but followed me to the table. I remained standing, feeling more confident in the power position. You all believe I should sell my house to Mackenzie and Ryan because they need a family home with character and history for their baby, I began. That's the narrative we've been discussing for weeks now. Yes, my mother said, and we're so glad you've. I held up my hand. I'm not finished. Before making my final decision, I did some research. I opened my portfolio and began laying out documents on the table. These are building permits and architectural plans for a 7,500 square foot modern mansion in the Newfields development. The owners are listed as Ryan and Mackenzie Campbell. The color drained from Mackenzie's face. Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. My parents looked confused. The permits were approved 8 months ago, I continued, and construction is already well underway. Completion is expected in approximately 6 months, right around your due date, Mackenzie. What is this? My father demanded, picking up one of the documents. Evidence that Mackenzie and Ryan have been building their actual dream home for months, I replied. Long before they suddenly decided they needed my house for their family. There must be some mistake, my mother said, looking to Mackenzie for explanation. I clicked through photos on my laptop, images of the massive construction site with its concrete foundation, framed walls, and architectural features that matched the plans exactly. No mistake, I said. They've already spent over $1.5 million on this project. Mackenzie, my father turned to her, his voice sharp. What is this about? Mackenzie glanced at Ryan, who remained silent, then burst into tears. We can explain. We just thought it would be nice to have options. Options? I echoed. Let me show you what this is really about. I pulled out the property value projections and zoning documents. My neighborhood is about to undergo massive development. Property values are projected to double in the next 5 years due to rezoning and the new tech corridor being built nearby. Understanding dawned on my father's face as he examined the documents. As a finance professional, he immediately grasped the implications. You never intended to live in my house, I said, looking directly at Mackenzie and Ryan. You wanted to buy it at half its value knowing it would soon be worth twice as much. This was never about family history or giving your baby roots. It was about money. That's not true. Mackenzie protested, but her denial lacked conviction. I turned to Ryan, who had been suspiciously quiet throughout the entire conflict. Ryan, you're a CEO. You understand real estate investment. Tell us honestly, was this your idea? All eyes turned to Ryan. Under the collective pressure, his carefully maintained facade cracked. It was a good investment opportunity, he admitted. We identified several properties in the neighborhood that would appreciate significantly. Yours was the most promising, and we thought the family connection would give us leverage to acquire it below market value. Ryan. Mackenzie gasped. It's over, Mackenzie, he said tiredly. She has the evidence. There's no point continuing this charade. My mother covered her mouth in shock. You used your pregnancy to manipulate us? To pressure Autumn out of her home? Not exactly, Mackenzie said defensively. The baby is real, and we did think it would be nice to have a property with character in the family. We just also saw the investment potential. And were willing to destroy my relationship with my family to get it, I added. You let Dad threaten to disown me over a real estate investment. My father had gone very quiet, staring at the documents spread across the table. When he finally looked up, there was something in his eyes I'd rarely seen directed at Mackenzie, disappointment. You lied to us, he said slowly. You made us believe Autumn was being selfish when all along you were trying to take advantage of her. It wasn't like that, Mackenzie insisted, but her protests were growing weaker. I took a deep breath, gathering my strength for what I needed to say next. This situation has shown me something important about our family. For my entire life, I've been treated as less valuable than Mackenzie. My choices, my career, my needs have always been secondary to hers. I accepted that as just the way things were. I looked directly at my parents. But when you threatened to disown me for not giving up my home, my literal safety and security, that crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. You showed me exactly where I stand in this family. My mother began to cry. Autumn, we never meant. Maybe you didn't mean it consciously, I acknowledged, but your actions spoke clearly. And now that you know the truth, that Mackenzie and Ryan tried to defraud me with your help, I need to know where you stand. My father stood up, his expression grave. Mackenzie, Ryan, I think you should leave. Your mother and I need to speak with Autumn alone. For once, Mackenzie didn't argue. She and Ryan gathered their things and left without further protest, the weight of their exposed deception hanging heavy in the air. When the door closed behind them, my father turned to me. Autumn, I don't know what to say. We were wrong. Completely wrong. We let ourselves be manipulated, my mother added, wiping her tears. But that's no excuse. We should have trusted you, supported you. Yes, you should have, I agreed, not making it easy for them. The question is, where do we go from here? My father sat down heavily. I'd like to say we can just go back to the way things were, but I know that's not possible. We've damaged your trust in us, perhaps beyond repair. Not beyond repair, I said after a moment, but it will take time. And things need to change. I won't go back to being the less important daughter, the one whose needs always come second. You never should have been, my mother said quietly. We've failed you, and I'm so sorry. We talked for hours that evening, having the most honest conversation of our lives. They admitted to their pattern of favoritism, acknowledging how it had shaped our family dynamics in toxic ways. I shared how it had affected me growing up, always feeling I had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. There were no quick fixes or easy reconciliations. The wounds were too deep, the patterns too ingrained. But it was a beginning, the first step toward a more honest and equitable relationship. As for Mackenzie and Ryan, the exposure of their scheme created a rift that would take even longer to heal. Mackenzie eventually reached out with a written apology, admitting that she'd let greed and entitlement override her better judgment. Ryan's company faced financial difficulties in the months that followed, forcing them to scale back their mansion plans significantly. Sometimes consequences arrive in unexpected ways. The weeks following the confrontation were surprisingly quiet. My parents respected my request for space, sending only occasional texts to check in rather than the barrage of guilt-inducing messages I'd come to expect. Mackenzie maintained her distance, either out of shame or resentment, I wasn't sure which, and for once, I didn't feel compelled to find out. This period of silence gave me something I'd never fully had before, the freedom to define myself outside of my family's expectations and judgments. I poured myself into my design business, taking on challenging new projects and expanding my client base. I hosted dinner parties for friends in my beautiful dining room, filling the house with laughter and genuine warmth. Rachel and James became even more important fixtures in my life, along with other friends who had always seen my worth even when my family couldn't. We celebrated holidays together, created new traditions, and built a chosen family based on mutual respect and authentic connection. You seem different, Rachel observed over brunch about 3 months after the confrontation. More confident, somehow. I feel different, I admitted. It's like I've been carrying this weight my whole life, trying to prove my worth to people who weren't capable of seeing it. Putting that down is liberating. That's not to say the estrangement didn't hurt. There were moments when I missed the idea of family, the comfort of belonging somewhere by birth rather than by choice. Certain songs, smells, or memories would trigger a wave of grief for what might have been if my parents had been different, if Mackenzie and I had been raised to support rather than compete with each other. But healing doesn't mean absence of pain, it means learning to carry it differently, to integrate it into a life that's fulfilling despite and sometimes because of past wounds. On a crisp autumn day, almost exactly 3 months after our confrontation, I received an unexpected text from my father. "I'm in your neighborhood for a meeting. Would it be possible to stop by briefly?" "Just me." I hesitated, then replied, "I'll be home until 2. He arrived looking older somehow, more uncertain than I'd ever seen him. The commanding presence that had defined him throughout my childhood was muted, replaced by something more human and vulnerable. "Thank you for seeing me," he said as I invited him in. We sat in the living room, the afternoon sun filtering through my grandmother's lace curtains. He looked around appreciatively at the restoration work I'd done, noticing details he'd overlooked during previous visits. "You've done something remarkable with this place," he said. "I never truly saw it before." "Thank you," I said simply. He took a deep breath. "Autumn, I've come to apologize. Not just for what happened with the house, but for a lifetime of not seeing you clearly. Of not valuing you as you deserve to be valued." His voice broke slightly, something I'd never witnessed before. "Your mother and I have been seeing a family therapist. It's been illuminating and painful in equal measure. We've had to confront some hard truths about our parenting, about the way we've treated you compared to Mackenzie." "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "It can't have been easy." "It wasn't," he agreed. "But it was necessary. The therapist helped us see patterns we were blind to, how we consistently elevated Mackenzie's needs and desires above yours, how we praised her accomplishments while taking yours for granted." He looked me directly in the eyes. "I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness. I know that's not how this works. But I am asking for a chance to do better, to rebuild our relationship on healthier ground." His sincerity was palpable, and I found myself moved despite my lingering wariness. "I'd like that," I said truthfully. "But it will take time and there will be setbacks. Old patterns don't disappear overnight." "I know," he nodded. "I'm prepared for that. We both are." Over the following months, my parents and I began the slow, sometimes awkward process of rebuilding our relationship. We started with brief coffee meetings, then gradually progressed to occasional dinners. My mother joined my father in therapy and made her own separate apology, equally heartfelt if more tearful. They made concrete changes, not just empty promises. They asked questions about my business and actually listened to the answers. They remembered details about my projects and clients. They respected my boundaries without guilt or manipulation. Small steps, but meaningful ones. Mackenzie was a more complicated story. Her pregnancy progressed, and the family drama had taken a toll on her health. Her doctor ordered bed rest during her 3rd trimester, and Ryan's company continued to struggle financially. Their mansion project was put on indefinite hold. 6 months after our confrontation, she reached out with a request to meet. We sat in a neutral cafe, her now prominent baby bump between us like another presence at the table. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, uncharacteristically hesitant. "About why I felt entitled to your house, why I was willing to manipulate everyone to get it." She traced patterns in the condensation on her water glass. "I've always been given everything I wanted. By mom and dad, by teachers who saw my potential, by bosses impressed with my credentials. I never learned how to handle being told no." It wasn't a complete apology, but it was more self-awareness than I'd ever seen from her. We talked for nearly 2 hours, not solving everything but at least acknowledging the dysfunction that had defined our relationship for decades. "I don't expect us to suddenly become best friends," she said as we prepared to leave. "But I'd like my child to know their aunt. If you're willing." "I'd like that too," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. The healing continued in unexpected ways. My business flourished, with a feature in a national design magazine bringing new high-profile clients. My grandmother's garden, which I'd painstakingly restored, won a local historical preservation award. The house that had become a battleground transformed back into a sanctuary, but one I now shared more freely with others. Mackenzie gave birth to a daughter they named Eleanor, after our grandmother. I visited them in the hospital, bringing a small quilt I'd had made from some of Grandma's saved fabric scraps. It was a peace offering of sorts, an acknowledgement that while the past couldn't be changed, the future remained unwritten. By the time Eleanor was 6 months old, my relationship with my parents had improved enough that I felt comfortable hosting a small family dinner at my house. As we sat around the dining table where my grandparents had hosted countless family meals, I felt their presence like a gentle blessing. The evening wasn't perfect, old tensions occasionally surfaced, but it was authentic in a way our family gatherings had never been before. After dinner, my father pulled me aside. "I want you to know," he said quietly, "that your mother and I have removed the condition from our will that would have split your grandmother's house between you and Mackenzie after our deaths. It was wrong of us to try to undo her wishes, and we've corrected that." It was a tangible acknowledgement of my right to what was mine, a concrete step toward rebalancing the scales that had been tipped against me for so long. The house itself continued to appreciate in value as predicted, but its true worth to me was never financial. It represented the continuity between past and future, the physical manifestation of my grandmother's belief in me, and now, ironically, the catalyst for healthier family relationships than we'd ever had before. Standing my ground had cost me dearly in the short term, the pain of rejection, the fear of permanent estrangement, but it had ultimately forced a reckoning that was long overdue. By refusing to sacrifice my boundaries for approval, I had inadvertently created the conditions for genuine connection based on mutual respect rather than obligation or manipulation. This journey taught me that sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people we love most, but they're often the most necessary. That family doesn't have to mean sacrificing your self-worth or security. That standing firm in your truth can be an act of love, not just for yourself, but ultimately for everyone involved. Have you ever had to stand your ground against family pressure? How did you navigate that difficult terrain? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found value in my experience, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to set boundaries, even with family. Remember, true love, including family love, should lift you up, not diminish you. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength and clarity in your own journey.